How's it going, you guys? So awesome to see you all again. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my high carb diet experiment that I've done pretty much the majority of this year, and kind of like how I've doubled down on high carb the last couple of weeks, I guess, or last month or two, and some of the weird kind of experiments I've done with carbohydrates. So, this has been interesting because for a long time, so I did carnivore / keto from November 2018 all the way until the end of 2020. And through 2019, I was almost exclusively ketogenic, kind of cycling in some plants here and there, but mostly staying carnivore. In 2020, again, I was mostly carnivore, but through some very short stints of 2020, I tried a little bit of carbs, tried targeting carbs and stuff like that. So in 2020, I tried more targeted carbs every now and then as an experiment. And I think I might have tried the Ray Peat style of eating for like 1 month or something. Then this year in 2020, I really bumped up the carbs. Almost this entire year, I've been eating pretty high carb. And when I say high carb, I'm talking around 200 to 600 grams of carbs a day, probably. And of course, at first, I was kind of like not fully committing to it because I was just like, I don't know if this is going to be good for me, blah, blah, blah. And so there's a couple reasons why I wanted to try this. So I've been kind of like getting into extremely harder athletic training and juggling a very physical job because I work as a strength and conditioning coach and a personal trainer with health consultations on the side. And at the same time, I'm training powerlifting and jiu-jitsu. And mind you, I did compete in Muay Thai on a ketogenic protocol and did really well. But with jiu-jitsu, I wanted to try this year, just seeing what would happen to my performance if I upped the carbs. And, especially because it's like the mainstream consensus that you need a high carb diet in order to perform well and all this stuff. And so it's been interesting. So what are some of the things that I noticed this year? So I think my high-end, my ability to continuously output high amounts of explosiveness and power, especially for 2-a-days, may be increased a little bit, but compared to when I'm fat adapted, I don't really know. Because when I was fat adapted in 2019, and I was just eating exclusively ketogenic macros, I was able to train at a high intensity 3 times a day without even eating, like during a 21-hour fast, which was pretty damn insane. Not only that, but my recovery, my soreness, my sleep was significantly improved when I was fat adapted. I don't know if it was just genetics or maybe it was placebo effect, but I felt like I was on some form of performance enhancing drug when I was fat adapted in 2019. Now, when I added all these carbs in this year, it's been really hard for me because I'm being told all the time how important a high carb diet is, and you have some people recommending anywhere from 300 to 600 grams a day or more, sometimes 900 grams of carbs a day for the type of activity that I do at my body weight. And at the same time, my health and performance increases are not being enhanced to the degree that I'm being told they should. So when I added all these carbs back in, I think I kind of saw a little bit of boost to my performance, but mostly compared to a non-fat adapted keto diet. So where, when you first start a ketogenic diet, your performance will go down and you'll feel lethargic and tired for like the first 2 weeks, depending on how much protein you're eating. I find if I'm eating a surplus of protein, like double the amount of protein I need, that transition period goes by faster and easier. But, and you know, people will say all this stupid shit like, oh, it's not ketogenic, whatever. But there's a drastic difference between when I was fat adapted performance and then high carb. And the difference is my sleep, my recovery, my performance seemed way better after 4 weeks on a ketogenic diet compared to eating this high carb diet for so long. It's been about 8 months now that I've been eating a high carb diet, you know, and I've been eating a ton of bananas, white rice, you know, and that for a long time was the majority of my intake. I've gone, you know, a couple weeks where I just ate mostly lots of bananas. And recently, I really wanted to double down on this and see if maybe I just need even more carbs. It's been really hard to slam down the recommended amount of carbs for an athlete training as far as I am. It can be hard, especially considering my digestive system can't handle brown rice and oatmeal and shit like that. Which I did try it earlier this year. You know, I could handle small amounts, but after a while, it starts to get tedious and overwhelming. So I'm gonna tell you guys the crazy part of this experiment here in a little bit that I did. I went pretty hard at towards the end, but for the majority, it was mostly just white rice, bananas, you know, and fruits, and my sleep quality drastically decreased. This was a huge problem that I had, where I noticed, mainly with white rice, when I started to add white rice, my sleep quality went down substantially. Like I had a harder time falling asleep, and then if I did fall asleep, I was very easily woke up. It was almost like my stress response was really high. Another thing is I noticed, I think I've been experiencing hyperglycemia. And this seems to happen irregardless of the type of carb I eat. Although I've noticed like fruit that seems to not cause that as much as like white rice, but I haven't been able to tell exactly. It's been kind of weird. But basically, about 2 or 3 hours after eating a higher carb meal, I will feel lethargic. I will feel tired. I'll feel foggy, dizzy. And the thing is, this happened before I went ketogenic. This was actually the main reason why I wanted to go keto in the first place, why I wanted to do carnivore in the first place, is because I always felt drained, I always felt tired and lethargic, and I had horrible sleep. And I had some other health issues as well. And I remember when I went carnivore/keto, I'm saying because I'm comparing the macronutrient composition and the metabolism I was on a ketogenic metabolism. My sleep immediately improved within like 3 days. My recovery improved. I was making all these PRs on my lifts. And I didn't know why at first. Eventually I kind of assumed, oh, it's because I needed more protein and I wasn't getting enough protein before on my high carb diet. But now I think that there is an extreme correlation between the amount of carbs I eat and my overall quality of life and my quality of health in general, like my sleep, my recovery, my brain, my energy levels. And when I went keto, I noticed I didn't need as many supplements for like energy and mind. I didn't need tonic herbs and stuff like that, which by the way, I think tonic herbs are an amazing addition no matter what, because they just kind of like are the icing on the cake that substantially enhance everything. But the thing is, I noticed the more carbs that I eat, the worse I feel, and the more reliant on tonic herbs I am, like the more inclined I am to eat tonic herbs. But when I eat keto or low carb, I sleep better, which improves my energy and my lethargy and things, and I don't experience those like highs and lows throughout the day. So yeah, like dips, like extreme tiredness a couple hours after eating a carb meal. My sleep just fucks. It just gets destroyed if I eat high carb. And I just feel an overall sense of of sickness in the background, like unease, and it's hard to really explain thoroughly. And I noticed when I went keto, and when I say keto, I'm just saying removing carbs, whether you're carnivore or you're actually ketogenic, or even like a low carb primal blueprint style diet. When I stick to whole foods and I keep my carbs under like 50 grams a day, give or take, I just feel healthy. Like it's just like a substantial feel of balance and health in my body. And I really should go back and I should probably get a hemoglobin A1C test, or probably more like a fasting insulin or something. Because maybe I have some abnormal lingerance of diabetes or something from like back in the old days when I used to slam energy drinks constantly. Because again, you know, some people might say, oh, well, your carnivore and keto diet must have made you insulin resistant or something. But no. The thing is, I felt like shit before I went keto for a long time. And it wasn't until I started to go more paleo. Every time I went more towards a paleo type approach or a low carb approach, I always started to feel healthier. But then when I add carbs back in, especially white rice or something like that, that's when I start to feel sick. So it's not keto that caused this. It's like that seems to actually be what makes me healthier. Because I felt like shit long before that. And keto / carnivore and even paleo, eating more bananas and stuff, regulated my body. So this is, you know, and so the thing is, like, even if carbs supposedly was supposed to help my performance, the large decreases in overall health and well-being and sleep just kind of ruins that for me. Like, I found myself finding it hard to go and train my clients sometimes because of the horrible decrease in sleep quality I had the night before. And even if I had a decent amount of sleep, relatively speaking, if I ate carbs before I went through to my clients, I would find myself like just being completely spaced out, like 2 hours after eating, where at first I'd be feeling pretty good, and then like it's like my clients would be talking to me and I'd be in somewhere else completely. And it's a terrible experience. Now the good thing is obviously I have a 145 IQ. According to my mom and my medical records, when I was in second grade, my IQ was 145. And I'm assuming, because I have such high intellectual capacity, that I'm able to function even if my blood sugar is completely fucked to the point where I feel like I'm gonna like pass out in the middle of training clients. But I've developed coping mechanisms where I'm still able to cope with life, even though I feel like I'm gonna die. And that just sounds terrible, right? So, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I wanted to do this high carb diet so I could perform at a very high level in my athletic life, but I feel like I'm gonna die because of the high carb diet, and I'm not sleeping well, and it's like, you know, it's not fucking worth it, you know? Not only do I feel sometimes like I'm gonna pass out just doing my normal job, on a high carb diet, by the way. When I keep the carbs low and blah, 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 I'm generally fine. You know, training is like I'm doing good physically, but like my mental thing, I am not there sometimes, and it's really strange. And sometimes I just feel so lethargic or tired from the high carb approach that I'm like, fuck, I don't even feel like going. But here's the interesting thing. So this high carb diet makes me feel like trash most of the time, but I notice after 30 minutes of high intensity exercise, I feel better. So what I'm thinking is maybe for some reason I have like hyperglycemia from these carbs, and exercise, especially like rolling. When I do jujitsu, the first 20 minutes of rolling, maybe the first like 2 rounds, the first 15 minutes or so of jujitsu, I'm like, oh man, I feel like trash. But then I start to feel better, like something in my body clears up. Like I feel really dehydrated at first, and then after going hard in jujitsu, it feels like my blood clears up. So I'm wondering if maybe I have high blood sugar and like I'm burning off this blood sugar training jiu-jitsu, and after like 20 minutes, the reason why I feel better is because my blood sugar regulated or something. I don't really know. All I know is after the first 15 or 20 minutes, I feel good again, and then I'm just like destroying shit and I'm performing at a high level. But it's really interesting because the worst that I felt through this entire thing was when I was preparing for my jiu-jitsu competition back in March, or was it April? I think it was like April. I think I competed in jiu-jitsu like on May 1st. You could find videos. I won a silver medal, and I outperformed everybody. And I could have won the gold medal, but I wasn't even expecting to win the silver because of how shitty I felt during training. That whole month I was just getting destroyed by other white belts, which is crazy. And I felt it was like really hard to breathe and all this shit. And I just noticed this whole fucking year I just felt like trash. And I think it's mostly because of the high carb diet. And it seems like whenever I try to add a high amount of carbs back in my diet, mostly from like refined sources, I notice fruits tend to be okay. But when it's like white rice and sugar and shit like that, I just feel like garbage. So let me kind of like tell you guys the extreme part of this high carb experience that I did. Okay, so again, at first it was mostly fruit, and I find like bananas and especially like berries and stuff like that, I feel really good when I eat mostly like berries, like a strict paleo, like Lauren Cordain style approach. I don't know why, but I've always noticed, wow, I feel amazing when I eat like a Lauren Cordain approach. And when I'm not trying to hit a carb intake, like when I'm just eating to satiation and I'm basing my diet on meat, fruit, and then like cooked vegetables, I feel great. But if I add in white rice, I'm like, oh fuck, like a little bit's okay sometimes, but it's like after I hit the 200 gram of carb mark from white rice, I'm fucking out. I start to feel like trash. Like if I eat a little bit of sushi here and there on the weekends or something, I'm alright. But if every single day I'm like trying to eat, you know, a cup of dry white rice, cooked obviously, a day to hit a carb mark, I feel like crap. Like I'm trying to follow this science-based, like this evidence-based nutrition thing for you know, sports performance, and it just doesn't work with the white rice and shit. Even though I seem to be digesting it just fine. Brown rice is another story. Now, so seems like white rice, yeah, it seems to fuck me up, but fruit's okay. Honey seems to cause, maybe, it seems to be fine directly beforehand. So here's something I'll tell you guys. Let's say that I had a really hard day at work, and I feel really tired around, I don't know, 5 p.m. Probably because I'm already eating a high carb diet and that's what I had for lunch. I'm crushing the carbs probably. If I eat a giant candy bar and a full sugar monster, like 4 hours after lunch, before my evening jiu-jitsu practice, which is really high intensity, that seems to give me just enough energy and a boost to perform really high at my jiu-jitsu later. And generally those carbs don't affect me so badly. So if I eat high like sugar before like high intensity exercise, I seem to be okay. But it seems to be like the white rice or the freaking sugar, if I eat that, or even if it's like honey, a large amount of honey, and I eat that and I'm not gonna like do exercise afterwards, I feel like trash. So from my experiments and things, I found, here's my main things I found. Refined carbs fuck me up, like generally. However, if I eat refined carbs, or basically high glycemic load carbs, fuck me up. And if I eat high glycemic load carbs, even upwards of 100 to 200 grams, like of just like pure sugar, right before I do jujitsu or high intensity cardio or something, I actually feel like $1 million. Like I feel amazing, and I can go for hours if I eat a shit ton of sugar right before I do jujitsu. I'll be rolling for 2 hours straight, and I'm like a fucking tank. I'm like a Terminator. But if I eat a large bolus of carbs, especially refined carbs or high glycemic load carbs or starchy carbs, and I'm not going to do exercise afterwards, maybe for another cup, like 5 hours or something, I just crash and feel like garbage. So something, maybe my body has trouble processing carbs or something, I don't know. And the last month or so, I started experimenting, and you guys are going to crucify me for this, but for the last month, I really wanted to see, am I just imagining things? So I started trying chocolate and freaking full sugar Monster, and I've also been experimenting with pure white sugar combined with dextrose powder, which is pure glucose, directly before exercise. Now the reason why I've been trying this is because it's not enough for me to listen to experts say sugar is good or sugar is bad or for exercise. I have to test it for myself to really see what's what, because nutrition is what's known as a soft science, not a hard science. Soft science means there's a lot of debating and there's not hard variables, and a lot of it's up for experimentation, and you can't just say there's no absolutes. We're working with dynamic biological processes that have no absolutes. So I have to try it for myself to really know what's true and what's not. So I did I've been doing the white sugar and freaking dextrose in a certain ratio that kind of is a science supporting the Gatorade or whatever before exercise, and I've noticed it seems to improve my exercise performance on a high carb diet, mind you. I feel just pumped up and ready to go, and I'm just like a tank. I'm like a Terminator. I just go for hours. But that's right before exercise. Now, the longer before exercise I eat carbs, the worse I feel, and sometimes it almost creates the opposite effect. Also, I notice I seem to have more sinus problems, more pains, more aches, and recovery issues when I eat high carbs, especially from refined carbs. Now, the problem is, if I don't time these carbs appropriately, then I can just get a massive sugar spike followed by a dip or whatever and just feel like garbage. Maybe just hyperglycemia. And I feel increased anxiety and all sorts of weird issues when I do these high sugar, especially high glycemic load, refined carb things. And I have a client who's actually got a PhD in statistics or data analysis, and she's always my last client before jiu-jitsu. And I have all my clients on a controlled carb diet where we're eating low carb, high protein, etc. But she's a doctor, she's got a PhD and whatnot in data analysis. So she does meta-analysis and stuff and design studies, which is awesome. So I love talking to her about it, and she's all trying to help me create a controlled study to really iron out if these carbs are really causing me to see what the effects are, whatever. But yeah, so it's funny because so anyway, here's what I've kind of figured out. Okay, high carb is like drugs. This is what for me personally, okay, because it's a general consensus that a high carb diet that I've been eating is if you watch Dr. Mike Israetel of Renaissance Periodization, he fucking eats a whole box of cereal of Trix or something, specifically children's cereal, the high sugar stuff. Immediately following his strength training stuff, and he does bodybuilding or whatever. So he eats a whole fucking box of kids cereal with low carb milk or whatever, low fat milk after his exercise, after his training. That's the general consensus for the evidence-based performance is eating a shit ton of fucking refined carbs around training. For me personally, I found that this makes me feel I guess diabetic. It makes me feel like an old man almost. It makes me feel like garbage. Now, if I time my carbs properly before exercise, it does seem to have a performance enhancing effect. But again, it's like drugs, where if you don't time it properly, it can make you feel like shit, and it can really just fuck you up. And it's like drugs, as in it has side effects, especially if not used properly. Now, if I compare, what the fuck is that? If I compare my high carb approach this year to my, like, the peak of my ketogenic fat adapted metabolism in 2019, which was when I really got deep into ketosis, I would say my brain worked better in ketosis. My focus and concentration was better in ketosis. My exercise performance was better in ketosis. My sleep was exponentially better. My achiness and pain was better. My sinus issues was better. My mood was better. My engagement with life was better. Every single aspect of my health and my just everything was better when I was on a ketogenic metabolism. But the thing is, back then I was not, I was doing mostly like weightlifting. So, and my strength was going up substantially when I was doing that. My kickboxing performance seemed to be okay once I got fat adapted, but jiu-jitsu, I don't know. I think my jiu-jitsu performance seemed to be affected differently from fat adaptation compared to kickboxing. I think people who think they need to eat carbs for fucking powerlifting, I think that is just laughable. Like, I see these fat powerlifters when I train at powerlifting gyms who are eating like gummy bears and drinking Gatorade and shit because they think that they need to do that to do, like, you know, one heavy set of a single on like a squat and then like 4 sets of 5 submaximal. I think that's just laughable compared to like jiu-jitsu training where you feel like you're gonna die for like 5 rounds for like an entire hour the whole fucking time. So anyway, I don't think you need carbs for like weight training, but like jiu-jitsu and MMA, I can see why people think they're going to need carbs, because it's just like an hour of like feeling like you're going to die from training. Weightlifting is nothing compared to fucking MMA training. It's just hard. Anyway, conclusion is, it's been fucking 8 months. I've had a hard time sustaining this diet. I've had a hard time fucking training with carbs. It's like when I can train consistently and not feel like garbage, it's like it's okay. But the net benefit doesn't seem to be there. So, unless there's some other factor that's making me sleep like garbage and feel like crap, I would say this carb experiment is not working for me. So, moving forward, number 1, I will not be eating this bullshit. This has been the worst idea ever. This makes me feel diabetic. I'll be making other videos about hyperglycemia in healthy individuals and why I think you shouldn't be doing if it fits your macros, even if you're supposedly healthy and lean, and why you might be able to exhibit diabetic symptoms even if you are supposedly healthy and lean and whatnot. But I think I'm going to cut out even like white rice, except for maybe occasions. I think I'm going to start basing my diet on berries, you know, low glycemic load fruits, cooked vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower, and then mostly meat and salt. And I don't think I'm going to be eating high fat keto, but I'm going to be eating like high protein and like a moderate amount of carbs from like just berries and low glycemic load fruit. And I'm not going to be aiming for a minimum carb intake like I've been doing. Like this whole year it's been trying to hit like about 300 grams of carbs a day. And I think from now on, I'm not even going to hit a minimum carb intake. I'm just going to say, fuck it, I'll eat berries with my meat and vegetables, but I'm just going to make sure I hit my protein goals. I'm going to see how I feel. And so I'll let you guys know how that is. Now, anybody who has been around me and known me and especially lived with me or been close to me for the last 5 years would probably say, yeah, Wolfgang, you know, you keep coming to the same conclusion over and over again. You keep saying, holy fuck, carbs don't work for you. I mean, I made many videos about this, but it's like, why do you keep torturing yourself like this? And it's like, well, because people keep saying, like, they keep insisting I need all these carbs and shit. So I'm like, well, fuck, am I just, you know, what, maybe I'm not doing it right. It's like, well, fuck, I keep trying, it's not working for me, but I keep trying it because people keep saying, hey, you need carbs and whatever. So, I don't know. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think, and yeah, I'm going to go for the low carb, but like not keto type approach here soon, and I'll let you guys know how it goes. Again, it's just going to be berries, like mangoes, like, you know, and then like freaking low carb cooked vegetables, but mostly meat. Gonna hit a minimum of like 200 grams of protein a day, and I'm not gonna eat as much butter and oils and shit. I'm not even gonna focus on like a minimum intake of carbs or fat, just protein. I'm just gonna focus on protein, and then everything else is gonna be incidental, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, yep. All right, thanks guys.